This is the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center's Something to Talk About. We do this Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you can find what upcoming events are coming up on our website at biseniorcenter.org. We're sponsored by Fieldstone Memory Care of Bainbridge Island. Fieldstone offers innovative and compassionate care, and they are now accepting residents at their Rolling Bay Memory Care facility. Call 360-271-2530 to schedule a tour. 360-271-2530. And today we're going to learn a little bit about Buddhism from somebody who knows a lot about it, Mike Lisagor, who's been practicing for decades. And we're grateful for your joining us today and putting together a special presentation for the Senior Center.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I really appreciate this opportunity to share my understanding of true happiness through the lens of a Buddhist, scientific, and psychological perspective, as well as my own life experience. When we became Buddhists in 1969, my wife and I were hippies. We had run away from home seeking love, peace, happiness, and in my case, freedom from responsibility. After months of eating brown rice and lentils and living on a friend's porch, we realized that we couldn't just survive on our ideals. Buddhism seemed like the perfect solution. We were told that if we chanted Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, we could become happy and all our dreams would come true. This was in Santa Monica, California, of course. I rarely thought to ask what true happiness was. I figured anything would be better than the severe depression and anguish I had suffered as a child and teenager. I was so frightened whenever I started to feel blue that I would do anything to get my smile back. Through many years of daily chanting and studying Buddhism, I was able to make and carry out strong determinations, have a warm, loving family, and build a successful business career. But on a different level, I still needed to deal with the reality of my sadness. What I began to realize was that I had finally changed enough to begin to explore some of the painful aspects of my life, including my wife's multiple sclerosis diagnosis in 1996. Also, around that time, the suicide of my good friend Gordon. Considering my own traumatic childhood, I wondered if I was in danger of making the same mistake. With my chanting as a spiritual foundation and a terrific set of therapists, including a few years ago, a wonderful EMDR therapist, I was finally able to begin the painful but rewarding process of healing myself from the effects of my abusive childhood so that I could truly devote myself to living in the present. So in the same way that Trudy took medicine and went to a neurologist for her illness, I took medicine and went to a psychotherapist for mine. I'm now much more able to allow myself to feel joy without fear or guilt and to experience pain without panic. The essence of this is being able to live in the moment, something we are taught as Buddhists, but as I continue to discover can be very difficult to achieve. The ever-present heaviness that had plagued me continues to diminish. There's no way to describe how wonderful this makes me feel. In 13th century Japan, Nichiren wrote that to be valid, a religion should have three proofs. Documentary proof, which means that the doctrine of a particular religion should be based on founding documentation. Theoretical proof means that the doctrine is compatible with reason and logic. Actual proof, which is the most important, means that belief and practice of a religion's doctrines produce positive results in one's life and daily affairs and in society. Since the purpose of any religion should be to relieve human suffering, actual proof is paramount. The belief that our happiness depends on some event or situation happening in the future sets us up for unhappiness, especially when we consider that we're all bound by the cycle of birth, sickness, old age, and death. If we wait for a trouble-free life, our happiness will continue to elude us. Rather, the question is, how do we respond when confronted with the problems we will inevitably face? Eventually, I came to realize that true happiness is when I strive to do my human revolution, the joy I experience from the efforts I make to overcome my own difficulties and to help others. While money, status, and wealth, the upper left in the slide, along with physical health and abilities, the left, and then you can see, and physical abilities are of course desirable. It is the nature of our attachment to them that can become problematic. In other words, do our attachments create value in our lives? Do they contribute to our own and others' happiness? Or are they just a lesser form of temporary happiness? Through my many years of Buddhist practice, I've come to realize it is spiritual wealth, the inner treasures of the heart that really guide us to true happiness. When I speak to the high school freshmen, which I do every year, this is one of the main points that I make to them, because if they can start in high school looking inward and not just outward, they're going to have such an easier time with life than if they don't. Daisaku Ikeda, the third president of our worldwide lay Buddhist organization, Soka Gakkai International, has said, the gratification of desires is not happiness. Genuine happiness can only be achieved when we transform our way of life from the unthinking pursuit of pleasure to one committed to enriching our inner lives, when we focus on being more rather than simply having more. So consistent with our Buddhist concept of relative and absolute happiness, psychological research has found that people in their later years whose primary focus in life has been the attainment of external goals, such as wealth, property, fame, and status, tend to be less happy. I mean, we can see that on the island we live on. In general, they are said to experience higher levels of anxiety, suffer more from illness, and have less of a sense of fulfillment. On the other hand, people who have also paid attention to their spiritual or inner well-being report being much more satisfied with their lives. In the Progress Paradox, researcher Greg Easterbrook draws upon 3 decades of wide-ranging research to make the assertion that while almost all material and physical aspects of Western life have vastly improved in the past century, most people feel less happy than in previous generations. So while pursuing physical and material fulfillment, what is most important is to develop treasures of the heart, the ability to make wise decisions, the courage to never give up, respect for oneself, and compassion for others. These are the attributes that give real meaning to our external endeavors and accomplishments and lead to true happiness. Another important concept is karma. It is where the latent effects of all our thoughts, words, and deeds from past lifetimes, or at least this lifetime, to the present reside or are stored. This karma can be either good or bad, though people tend to view karma as bad results stemming from bad actions in the past. But obviously not all our karma is bad, it's both. It turns out that this Buddhist concept is in complete accord with recent scientific findings regarding epigenetic gene transfer. Our ancestors' past behaviors, both positive and negative, are imprinted in our messenger RNA. These inherited causes, along with mental imprints collected through billions of discrete actions in our lifetime, create our karmic pattern. Cognitive psychologist Winston McCullough emphasized, this doesn't deny external events or the fact that people treat us in a certain ways, but karma is how we interpret, how we remember or react, how we make sense of these external events over time. There is hope, however, I hope. As an example, after 8 hours of mindfulness practice, the meditators in a recent study, and there's been hundreds of studies on meditating and chanting out loud and doing MRI studies, but this recent study showed a range of genetic and molecular differences, including altered states of gene-regulating machinery and reduced levels of pro-inflammatory genes, which in turn correlated with faster physical recovery from stressful situations. In other words, with diligent practice, we can change ourselves at the most fundamental level. Unfortunately, most of us don't have 8 hours a day to dedicate to a practice of silent meditation. Traditional meditation, as it is most understood, takes a great amount of concentration and time. And people living ordinary lives amidst harsh realities don't usually have the luxury to engage in such an effort. In my case, I have a difficult time remaining silent for more than 5 minutes. This is perhaps one of the reasons that Nichiren Buddhism, with its emphasis on the active meditation of chanting out loud, appealed to me and my wife and has spread relatively quickly around the world. From a psychological perspective, if we mistrust people due to past experiences, we may try to shield ourselves from being hurt. This may lead to perceiving others as untrustworthy or hesitating to share our honest thoughts. Our thoughts, words, and actions in this regard remain imprinted in our lives. These in turn influence our awareness, actions, and in the future lead to a cycle of suffering. Back to karma quickly. Obviously, human beings aren't always consistent. We have different ways of being at different times and in different situations. At times, you might be able to react very calmly and feel okay when another person is angry or upset with you. And at other times, you may feel really upset and might snap back at them or withdraw. So how can we assess our own behaviors, our reaction to external circumstances? Well, in the 6th century, a Buddhist scholar in China, Tiantai, identified 10 worlds, 10 states or conditions of life that we experience within our lives, moving from one to another at any moment, according to our interactions with our environment and to those around us. The lowest world of hell indicates a condition in which living itself is misery and suffering, and in which, devoid of all freedom, one's anger and rage become a source of further self-destruction. So it feeds into that karma. In the world of hunger, one is governed by endless desire for such things as food, profit, pleasure, power, recognition, or fame, in which one is never truly satisfied. This world is also characterized by greed. The world of animality is a condition driven by instinct and a lack of reason, morality, or wisdom with which to control oneself. In this condition, one is governed by the law of the jungle, standing in fear of the strong, but despising and preying upon those weaker than oneself. The world of anger is also called the world of animosity because it is characterized by persistent, though not necessarily overt, aggressiveness. It is a condition dominated by the lesser ego, in which excessive pride prevents one from revealing one's true self or seeing others as they really are. Clearly, these are not attractive, these first 4 conditions, but at the same time, there is a time to be hungry. There are times when we are grieving and we might be in the condition of hell. So these conditions of life are not necessarily always negative. But we don't want to spend a whole lot of time there. The world of humanity or tranquility, people try to control their desires and impulses with reason and act in harmony with their surroundings and other people, while also aspiring for a higher state of life. The world of heaven or rapture is a condition of contentment and joy that one feels when released from suffering and upon satisfaction of some desire. During COVID, for me, that was Netflix. It is a temporary joy that is dependent upon and may easily change with circumstances. For many people, this equates to happiness. The world of learning is a condition in which one awakens to the impermanence of all things and the instability of the lower 6 worlds. In this state, one dedicates one's to creating a better life through self-reformation and self-development by learning from the ideas, knowledge, and experience of one's predecessors and contemporaries. The world of realization is a condition in which one perceives the impermanence of all phenomena and strives to free oneself from the sufferings of the 6 paths by seeing some lasting truth through one's own observations and effort. So the world of learning, we're learning from outside of ourselves and integrating it. The world of realization is the realizations we have from all of that learning in our own experiences. These are higher conditions of life. The world of bodhisattvas is the state of compassion in which one thinks of and works for others' happiness, even before becoming happy oneself. Bodhisattva, which consists of bodhi or enlightenment and sattva beings, means a person who seeks enlightenment while leading others to enlightenment. According to recent scientific studies, if you want to feel more hopeful and be healthier and happier, one of the best things you can do is help another person. Taking altruistic action produces many benefits, such as releasing endorphins that make us feel better, give us a sense of purpose, and extend our longevity. In essence, helping others lifts us up too. This principle, which science today is beginning to examine in more depth, has always been the core of Nichiren Buddhism, a philosophy that comes alive through our compassionate actions to help others. The world of Buddhahood is a state of perfect and absolute freedom in which one realizes the true aspect of all phenomena or the true nature of life. However, previous Buddhist teachers, including Shakyamuni, the original Buddha that all Buddhism came from 2,500 years ago, as it spread around the world, taught their disciples that the path to enlightenment required detaching themselves from all earthly desires and mastering complex doctrines. This method of achieving enlightenment was only open to a small percentage of society. Most people didn't have the luxury of escaping their daily life. Nichiren, on the other hand, in the 13th century in Japan, taught his followers that the path to enlightenment was through directly challenging each obstacle in their everyday lives, not divorcing themselves from those obstacles. In other words, the condition of Buddhahood does not exist separate from our daily life or after we die. It lives within the other 9 worlds. Any of the 10 conditions, including Buddhahood, can manifest within our lives in an instant. We can experience joy in a hellish prison by teaching others how to learn something, or transform our anger to fight against injustice. We don't need to be a victim of our circumstances. To quote Viktor Frankl, everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Relative happiness speaks of a condition in which one's material desires or immediate personal wishes are satisfied. While there is no limit to what we can hope or wish for, there is a limit to what we can materially wish for and how long we can hold on to it. For example, we may get something we want at this moment, but the fulfillment we enjoy from getting it will not last. Through effort and planning, we may develop and adjust our circumstances to our liking, thinking this is happiness. But should those circumstances change or disappear, so will our happiness. Such happiness is called relative because it only exists in relation to external factors. In contrast, absolute happiness means that living itself is happiness. Being alive is a joy, no matter where we are or what our circumstances. It is a life condition in which happiness wells from within. It is called absolute because it is not influenced by external conditions. Attaining Buddhahood means developing absolute happiness in this lifetime. For Nichiren Buddhists, the daily practice of chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the engine that enables us to reveal this Buddha nature. That's our practice, our form of doing this, to illuminate our karma, our subconscious, our conscious mind, and our 5 senses. So Nam-myoho Renge-kyo lies beneath these other 8. Myoho Renge-kyo is the title of the Lotus Sutra, which documents the last 8 years of that historical Buddha, Shakyamuni or Siddhartha, his teachings 2,500 years ago. The word Nam roughly means to dedicate oneself through the action of practicing Buddhism. Myoho means mystic. It's the essential law of life. It is phenomenal manifestation which, like gravity, functions regardless of whether we believe in it or not. Renge symbolizes the lotus flower and the simultaneity of cause and effect. So for every cause, third thought, word, or action we make, a corresponding effect is stored in our karma, in our life, even if it doesn't manifest itself right away. So our lives are like the lotus flower, that with Practice eventually blooms in a muddy swamp. And finally, Kyo is sutra, the truth expressed through the sound of one's voice. So when we observe someone making what we would all probably agree is a bad cause over and over again, treating people not correctly, and we think to ourselves, wow, they just seem to be getting away with so much. And this person over here seems to be so suffering, but they treat someone so wonderfully and make good causes. From a Buddhist perspective, those effects don't manifest themselves right away. They manifest themselves when the environment matches with that karma. Everyone eventually has to experience whatever karma they've created. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, for those of you that are curious, and here's the pronunciation if you'd like to chant along. Here's what it sounds like for about, I don't know, 10 or 15 seconds. So that's a little bit slow. Usually when we chant in our own home, we might go Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. So a little faster. Finally, we're opening up our Buddhist centers. We have about 100 of them in the US, but they've been closed during COVID, and we haven't been able to have discussion meetings in our homes, which is where we tend to congregate. And so we've been doing it all over Zoom. So we haven't had that joy of chanting in a group, which is a great experience. But the practice is done in your own home anyway, so it works. In a fascinating paper in the 2017 International Journal of Wellbeing, psychologist Ashley Buchanan proposes bringing together two areas of research, a being well perspective from positive psychology and a socially and ecologically oriented do-good spiritual perspective. He gives the example of benefit mindset as everyday leaders who seek to be well and do good. Be well and do good. Wouldn't that be refreshing? It is interesting to note that this is in complete accord with the teachings of Nichiren, which emphasize the need to practice every day for the happiness of oneself and others. So just as we have to exercise every day to see a consistent result, we need to practice whatever our spiritual practice is consistently, in good times and hard times. I believe true happiness is something close to the joy or sense of fulfillment and confidence that arises from trying to make the world a better place and from the ability to enjoy our lives. Being happy is a sense of connectedness with everyone around us, because whether we believe it or not, from a Buddhist perspective, every single life in the world and the universe is connected in some way. It's a tapestry. So what we do does make a difference, because we're all unique. We can only do what we can do. And as Daisaku Ikeda has said, happiness is not found in a tranquil life free of storms and tempests. Real happiness is found in the struggles we undergo to realize our goals and our efforts to move forward. I realize we don't really believe that if people chant or meditate or pray, they will always be smiling and cheerful. Rather, they will be more fulfilled and happier with their lives. Lasting happiness comes from within and is a condition we can experience when or because we're facing difficulties. Even amidst the most trying times, happiness is not out of reach. We can move in the direction of our dreams and face our problems wisely and courageously. We can come to savor the greatest of joys, the ability to live life with a deeper and stronger sense of confidence, appreciation, and hope. We have the power to take charge of our own destiny and become a positive change in our family, local community, and the entire world. And lastly, just very few words about our entirely lay Buddhist organization. Over 12 million Soka Gakkai international members in 192 countries and territories develop their lives through daily chanting, neighborhood discussion meetings currently on Zoom, and by studying the teachings of Buddhism and the many writings of our third president, Daisaku Ikeda. In America, there are over 100 Buddhist centers and 3,500 meeting locations. The SGI actively promotes peace, culture, education, and interfaith dialogue based on a belief in positive human potential and respect for the dignity of all life. 3 years ago, 58,000 SGI youth members and guests gathered in 9 US cities as a commitment to the elimination of weapons of mass destruction, peace, and social justice. There was a slide, but I'll tell you what's on it. It lists some books. So if you're interested in books or my contact information, I will give it to you right now. Some of the books that I would suggest if you'd like to study this further are The Buddha in Your Mirror, which is a great book. Any books by Daisaku Ikeda, he's written probably over 100. A lot of dialogues with well-known people around the world. I've written 2 books, Romancing the Buddha and My 50 Years of Buddhist Practice. That one came out in last November. And my contact information is mike@romancingthebuddha.com. So it's romancingthebuddha.com. And my cell phone, if you want to text me, is 206-718-2447. 206-718-2447. But you have to sing it like that when you use it. So last paragraph, in today's challenging times, it helps me to remember that hope, like happiness, is truly the state of the mind, not the state of the world. This truth gives me confidence that each of us can build a happy life and make a positive difference in the world. Daisaku Ikeda stated in his book series, The Human Revolution, that a profound change in the life of a single individual, any one of us, could change the direction of an entire society. So when our faith in humanity is slipping, let's be inspired by the possibility of a world without hate. Let's remain convinced that each of our efforts to treat everyone we encounter with understanding and compassion makes a profound difference that ripples far into the future. It's exactly through making these efforts every day that we can reignite our sense of joy and maintain our inner confidence in the future. Thank you very much.
I have a question, and I think that if anybody else has a comment or question, it would be great to invite you to share them. So I'll start, and then we'll open up the microphone. You talked a little bit about that idea of being trusting in the universe, trusting in our world, and I wondered about how you might balance the need for caution or awareness of risk in a world that is not uniformly maybe generous to us. We face challenges and we face bad actors, if you will, or individuals who might try to take advantage of us, but we want to be open and trustful in this world.
Oh, what a great question. Well, I will say, from a Nichiren Buddhist perspective, we're encouraged to use common sense, right? The Buddha's wisdom isn't to just, I'll give you an example. There's a famous bodhisattva from a few thousand years ago, and his practice was to bow down to everyone he met, and he had like a 22-word thing, which I don't remember specifically, but it's basically, I recognize and respect and value your enlightened nature that every human being has. In other words, everyone has a Buddha nature. But if they threw rocks at him, which in the first few years they mostly did, he backed up out of the distance so that the rocks wouldn't hit him. And then he bowed again, and he repeated his mantra. And as he did that, he gathered thousands of followers, because it was his way of speaking to everyone's enlightened condition. And I would argue that our challenge as human beings who want to better ourselves and want to better the world is that somehow we have to bridge this divide between people and be able to engage in dialogue and see the Buddha nature and talk to that enlightened nature in everyone, regardless of how much we may disagree with them. I have noticed this year I've been working on my tendency to judge people. And I have learned that I'm still learning, but I'm happy to report that I haven't judged any of you, even though I can see you. But I'm learning that just because somebody annoys me, or I don't believe their political view, or this or that it doesn't always mean they're wrong. You know, I think it's a human nature to jump to that conclusion, you know. So Reed, I guess in short, the answer to your question, which I already did in long, is I don't trust everyone in the world. You know, there's too many people that would do us harm. But at the same time, I don't want that to be the reason that I completely isolate myself and don't engage, because then I can't grow and I can't make a difference. And I'm basically, it's the word abrogate, you know, giving up my power to everyone else.
Abdicate. Yeah, somebody just whispered, abdicate.
Thank you. Oh yeah, abdicate. Which sometimes I wish some of our leaders would abdicate, but they don't seem to do it willingly anyway.
Carol, did you have a comment or question?
No, that was me that I guess had my mic on.
Oh, thank you.
See, I told you the Rolodex works. It's just slow.
That's an easy question, Carol. Yes.
Anyone else have a question or comment? You can just unmute yourself and ask away, Marilyn.
You know, I am going to assume, Mike, that I know the answer to this, but I very recently had am communicating via Facebook with someone I've known for a very long time. Her husband just died after a long illness, and she is telling me that she's not sure she can go on. So I'm wondering if you think, what do you think? I guess I'll open it. How would you handle this?
Well, that's probably, some of that's within my purview, some of it isn't. I'll stick to my purview. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some other people here that have even maybe professional, but as somebody who he has almost taken my life on a number of occasions in the past because of what I went through as a child. And I'm happy to say that I'm finally at a place in my life where I want to be here. I don't want to leave, which is an enormous benefit for myself. That we all face despair. At some point, my wife and I have been together 52 years. And we've been doing this Buddhist practice for 52 years together. And at some point, one of us, we're hoping we fall asleep like James Garner and whoever that other actress was in that movie. Was it Notebook? I don't remember. If they fall asleep, it's so great. I wish we just want to fall asleep and not wake up. Odds are one of us will go on. From a Buddhist perspective, life is just precious. Every moment we have. I heard Daisaku Ikeda once explain this lifetime as being what happens that when we stand up, our life goes away. It's like when we go to sleep at night. But when we sit back down, our lap is right there. So our lap goes away when we stand up. And that life's like that. And then it's the only time we can really make causes for ourselves and for a better world and for our family and our descendants is when we're in this lifetime. We have this precious moment to make causes to change our lives and our karma. And so we shouldn't relinquish that too easily. And, you know, I lost my sister when she was really young. And I remember that grief, and it's that feeling of not wanting to go on because you're so reliant on maybe that person's encouragement or inspiration. But I think as someone, when I was feeling as low as I was, I just needed somebody to care. I needed somebody to listen. I needed somebody to be there for me. And I'm not sure that there are any words from my experience. There's not a, okay, these are the 5 bullet points that you can say, and anyone who wants to take their life won't, or anyone who doesn't want to go on won't. And not just take their life, but continue to live in despair. She's going to grieve. Grieving is a natural process. We can't, we can try not to grieve, but it's impossible. It goes somewhere, and it can make us really ill if we don't find a way to express and to process that grief. So you can be part of that processing for her, but at the same time, you can't live her life. We can't live someone else's life, and we don't know how long a life's supposed to be. Some lives are over in a year, and some lives are over in 99. We just don't know. But we do know that we're all born with, a death sentence. So it's, what's important is, what do we do while we're here before they take us, to the chamber? So I hope that helps some. I suspect I hope you can encourage her to reach out wherever she's living and either see a therapist or talk to her spiritual leader. She needs to make connection with other people, because if she stays in her own mind and just ruminates, she will go into despair, and that's when dangerous things can happen. And all we can do is our very best to not allow it to happen.
Now, in your instance, Mike, where you were in despair and working on your own sense of hopelessness, did you find the practice of chanting, of sort of getting out of the moment of your sort of head talk, your bad chatter, useful?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have done it every day for 52 years if it didn't prove extremely useful to me. And the answer is yes. And we've been together since we were 19 and 17. And, we were living on a guy's porch for 3 months. The odds of, because I was forbidden to see my wife because I was rumored to have smoked marijuana, which I had actually done much worse, but it would have even been worse. So at least they didn't call the police. But we ran away from home when the day my wife graduated high school and didn't go back. So that first 10 years, several years of marriage, the only thing that kept us together was the fact that we did intensely love each other, but was chanting every day. And we got this wonderful advice, which fits any relationship, that as long as you're facing each other and, complaining about each other, this is true on a national level too. As long as you're complaining and fighting each other, you'll never be happy and your marriage will never work. But this guy told us, one of our Buddhist leaders at the time, as long as one of you faces forward, we chant to a scroll. It's just a piece of paper like a mirror that we don't idolize it. It's a piece of paper that says Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and a bunch of other stuff from 700 years ago, and actually lives in our life. So we're really, when we chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, we're chanting to our own enlightened life. We're not chanting, we're not looking for answers outside of ourselves. They come sometimes a lot outside, but we're really changing inside so that we can hear them and see them. And yes, every single time those first several years, I chanted so many Nam-myoho Renge-kyos just to be able to go to work, just to be a good husband and then eventually father of my 2 daughters, because there was always stuff going on that was fractured off as a child because I was really abused. And so, if you're familiar with EMDR and psychology and all of that, that those parts of ourselves, all of us had some trauma when we were kids, fractures off if it's bad enough. And I needed to reintegrate that. And chanting kept me going because I could lift my condition of life. And whatever any of us do, I hope everyone, whether it's chanting or whatever you do as your spiritual practice, the reason for that spiritual practice, that religion that you practice, should be to relieve your suffering. It should be that when you're feeling down and hopeless, you can do something that lifts you up. And that's both a community, a spiritual community. It doesn't have to be the same religion, but that community that supports you and lifts you up, as opposed to the community that brings you down, which is why I don't watch the news anymore. We got rid of cable. I mean, I know what's going on in the world, but I sure as hell don't need to know it every, 52 times.
You don't need to wash yourself in it.
No. I find that that's just too much for me, knowing how I'm wired, because I take in stuff too much.
Yeah, and
so
your notice about the idea of different practices makes me think about Thich Nhat Hanh, who has a Buddhist practice that involves walking. And obviously there are other kinds of chants, and there's also a lot of evidence, I think, now of and I don't know whether this might be a little too far to go at this point at 15 after, but the difference between sort of religious practice and what people who might have a difficulty with religion but understand the value of meditative or sort of inner secular practice, if you will. And there are some evidences of even some value from those as well, right?
Oh, I want to point out that anyone can chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. We have an organization, and it's, we don't have priests, but we have, lay leaders, but all the leaders exist to help the members, not the other way around. But we have an organization because Buddhism's profound. You can study it for your whole life and still keep learning, and also to encourage each other when we're struggling, right? And so that's the reason for our Buddhist community. But anyone can chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. I have found that particular sound, and I don't know why, is incredibly powerful. I've tried other sounds, and I do get a benefit from them, but I've never gotten quite the benefit of this particular phrase. It's very profound. And, when you walk into if you're in the airport, my name's Mike. Oh, you all knew that. My name's Mike. And when I'm at the airport, inevitably somebody calls Mike. So I'm always turning around, but it's not always me. Whatever your name is, when people call your name, you react, because that's the name that you've assumed in this lifetime. I'm Carol, I'm Eileen, I'm, Reed. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, according to Nichiren, is the name of our enlightenment, of our enlightened condition. And so when you call its name, it's like when a bird in a cage sings and the birds on the outside answer. This bird is inside of us. And I'm sure there's other ways of unlocking that enlightened condition, but as Asia, a young lady who's I'm guessing in the bus riding to her job at Bima. She works in the bistro. So go to the bistro in Bima. It's a really awesome, and meet Asia, because she's one of the most remarkable young women I've ever met. She started this practice a few weeks, like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And, I think she's discovering that, wow, I feel different. And that's what a practice should do. It shouldn't be just because, okay, I believe miserable things happen to you, but I believe. That doesn't make sense to me. It should have actual proof in your life. Otherwise, you're not going to keep doing it. So you get to choose for yourself. So you can experiment.
I don't know if you can hear me. This is Christina. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm sorry I was late. I come and do these talks while I'm at work, and sometimes I get very late coming in. So I don't know if you talked about anger. The thing with, I do meditate and things, but you said something earlier that struck me, that you're going to feel what you're going to feel. And I think you also said you need to feel it. So what do you do with the anger, because anger is very real. And I do believe that it helps some to feel it and not tamp it down. So how does this work into the chanting?
The reason, well, you know, I had put up a slide that had the 10 conditions of life, and anger was one of them. Hell, hunger, anger. And anger is interesting, because when my girls were little, or my grandkids, if they go to touch the stove, you know, I'm gonna get angry and pull them away. That's anger. That's using my wisdom to bring out anger in the right way. Anger that's like, I'm angry at my next door neighbor because their dog barks. Is that real? Yes. But you know that saying that, I forget the saying, but it's basically whenever you are angry at someone else, you poison yourself. Because yeah, you might be hurting that person, but most of the time they're not even around anymore, but we're angry. And so what do we do with that anger? What do we do when that anger lives in us, but the cause of the anger isn't even there anymore? If it's there, like as a child, I couldn't get out. I couldn't get away. So I just started rocking in a chair every day for 4 or 5 years, because that was how I escaped what was going on around me. But when you're an adult, not always, but you can usually walk away from something that's making you angry, even if it means eventually leaving the job or leaving that person that's making you angry. We can respect people, but put a distance between us. We chant to bring out our Buddha nature and let it illuminate the world of anger. Let it illuminate the world of hunger. So when I'm feeling angry, I can sit down and chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and this is why I do the practice. I can sit down and chant, and I can bring out that world of enlightenment and gain the wisdom and the compassion for myself that anger is hurting me. So, and also to be able to raise my condition of life so that maybe I raise it up to at least tranquility. If not, maybe I call somebody and say, you know, I'm really angry about so-and-so, they don't treat me right. Every time I'm around them, I just want to scream. And I don't know what to do with it. And you call someone that you trust and can confide in, and allow them to encourage you, allow them to help you raise your condition. But first I sit down and I chant, because a lot of times when I'm angry, I don't even want to talk to anybody. Because you know, if nothing else, because I don't want to bring them down by calling them and saying, I'm so pissed, because they're so tired of me going, I'm so pissed, that they don't want to hear from me anymore, right? So however it is that, whether it's chanting, whatever can bring you into a higher condition of life, that's how you get out of that world of anger. And I can tell you, you won't get rid of anger just by changing your environment, because everywhere we go, there we are. And that's the fundamental truth of Buddhism, and maybe many other practices, is that ultimately, doesn't matter if I get a different house, even if I were to get a different wife, she's probably in the other room outside the door going, yeah, my chanting worked. It doesn't matter what you do. Change your job. You're taking your karma, you're taking your tendencies. We all have life tendencies. One of those worlds, like some of us react more with anger, some of us react with tranquility. When someone's really doing something we don't like, we go into, you know, pacifist mode, which can be really good, but it can also be really destructive because you're not changing the situation. Some of us go in, you know, we go into hell. We're in this hellish condition, and we just live there because we don't know how to get out of it. Whatever condition you find yourself tending to go to, our practice is to raise our life condition and gain the wisdom on how to react differently. Because we can't control the crap that happens to us, especially in a time of COVID, in a time when people are acting so stupidly. whatever your beliefs are, we're all acting probably in some way or another stupidly, you know, and we can't change that. I can't change COVID, but I can change how I react to it. I get to choose whether I'm going to get up today and I'm going to live the happiest, joyful, helping others life I can, even though the world is so effed up. Because the world will continue to be effed up unless people like us just do our own little bit to make a difference. And I choose to believe that 10,000 years from now, because you know, with epigenetics, I've influenced our daughters. My daughters didn't have the terrible childhood I did. They believe they had a storybook childhood. We pulled the wool over their eyes. And my grandchildren who live back in Boston, who we've only seen a few times, but we FaceTime, fortunately, they FaceTime us all the time. They're 9 and 12. And we're having such a profound influence on their lives. And that also means when they have kids, the way we influence them is going to pass on to their generation, next generation, and the next generation. Just like I had to suffer the crap that my generation, my grandfather and father and the terrible alcoholic abuse that passed down through that family line. Our only thing we can do, we can't change that, except that we can in the sense that if we change our own behavior, our own life inside, we can turn that karma around. All right, goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Reach out if you'd like to go to a Zoom meeting, they're free.